I want to invite you to go back to Washington, D.C. in 1963 when basically something interesting was happening around the Washington Post, or basically a big story about leadership and succession in family business. Catherine Graham, she inherited the Washington Post in a not so nice way. Her father, he bought the Washington Post many years before, and in the moment to pass the company along for the next generation in the family, it was quite traditional. We are talking about other times that this would go to the most capable man or the most capable person to run the business. In this case, what's most common to be a man. Catherine was not even considered because even she was not thinking that could be leading a business at the time. So her husband took over Washington Post. What happened is that unfortunately he passed away, and he died in a tragic way, unexpected way. And basically, Catherine will take the control of the company when that happened. She was 46 years old by the time, and she had never even considered to be running a business. She had no knowledge. She was not prepared for that. There was no succession plan on how that would be performed. And she arrived in the leadership seat with that big concern in her mind. What should I do? Basically, the story of the Washington Post is a reason for movies and books, and we can learn a lot about that because what Catherine did was incredible. She took over, she tried to understand the business, and she took some very, yeah, different decisions, I will call like that, for journalism by the time. In 1971, she published the Pentagon Papers, basically challenging the advice even from the lawyers of the company, and with a direct pressure from the government, documents about the Vietnam War. And in 1972, or around that, 92, 72, 73, she held a firm position publishing on the Watergate scandal coverage, with all the people in Washington pushing back. So Washington Post was the took the courage decision to cover those things, and she became some years later the first female CEO in a Fortune 500 company. So it's an impressive story that actually was transformed in a good way for a succession plan that was not planned, that happened without any consideration on that would play out for the people working on that company. What happened is that she stayed connected to the company until early 2000s, or the beginning of this century, and she died at 84 with a great preparation at the company, a great preparation at Washington Post for the succession plan. Why I'm talking about that? Basically, if you followed the news recently, now around April, beginning of May, Apple, the biggest and most valuable company in the world, they have a new CEO. Uh, Basically, what is happening right now, or what was announced, is that Tim Cook is going to become the executive chairman of the board for Apple, and he is moving the leadership of the biggest company in the world to John Ternus, which was or it is right now the senior vice president of hardware engineering. And he joined Apple in 2001, so it's been 25 years working at the company. And inside the company, inside the business, there is no surprise. The Silicon Valley and California, they don't look surprised when publishing about this because it appears that the succession plan is just moving as it should. It's interesting because, when you talk about big companies, there's always a concern like how much of the success of those companies are on responsibility of their current leaders. And that is a great thing to reflect because succession plan is a way to ensure that your company is moving to the right direction, and this direction is going to ensure a future for the company. Because thinking about family business, for example, if you are not preparing someone to take over the leadership and continue the way that you are doing things today, and thinking on how and where you need to innovate, your company will not be relevant anymore for the future, and that is a big deal. And in the case of Apple, as I said, things sound like they were quite prepared. Tim Cook even said publicly that John has the mind of an engineer, the soul of an innovator, and the heart to lead with integrity. What interesting. But what caught my attention is that in the official announcement, John Ternus said, I had the privilege of working under Steve Jobs and having Tim Cook as my mentor. Look how interesting it is. He used the word mentor here with Tim Cook. So basically, and this is in the official announcement, that word appears in a great way or in a great moment, considering everything else that is happening around other companies. Because compare that situation on Apple, a good transition, a transition happening according to the plan, as we say. And at the same time, we see the market that is cutting middle managers' positions, replacing things or reducing those positions, calling this as a improvement from a cost reduction perspective, looking for ways to make things more productive, to improve even some of those processes using AI. And also, there is a lot happening. We talk about that in a recent video in this channel where we discussed the problems around positions for junior professionals or M3 positions being cutted by many companies, also with the narrative of AI to increase productivity or to be more efficient. The problem with that is, of course, reducing costs and becoming more efficient is something important. But we need to be careful here with the narrative and what exactly is the short, medium, and long term strategy. Because focusing only on the short term perspective, reducing a cost, improving something on what is happening right now on the business results, can be sometimes a decision that will make the company survive for more 3, 5, perhaps 10 years. And that is, of course, a hard decision that many times is needed. I'm not challenged that. What I'm challenged, or I'm not even challenged, I'm calling for a reflection, is that many times companies can take decisions thinking only on the short term and not thinking about all the things that should be also considered from a long term perspective that will make the company still relevant to the future. And that is something very relevant when we think about, for example, what is what is the plan for the future? The generations who are going to buy my services are going to be different. The need for my products and services are probably going to be different as well. What am I doing with my company and my business right now? Look into the future that will make us still be relevant. And a succession plan, a, a way of preparing new leaders to take over leadership positions in the future, it's one of the way to make this happen. Apple has been preparing maybe the next CEO for the past 20 years, I don't know, or maybe less, maybe more, but they were thinking about that. And Apple is the biggest company in the world for a reason. The same happened in many other big companies. We recently had a case similarly happening around Microsoft when the leadership was moving around. And the question here for you, if you are in a leadership position, who have the power to influence on that, is what are what is the strategy and what are the actions that your company is doing right now that will ensure that the future have a place for your business to be there? Because if you're not thinking about the future, if you're not thinking about how future generations are going to buy my products and services, and very importantly, how the leadership will look alike for my company in the future, you're maybe missing a very important piece in your strategic thinking, your strategy process that is reflecting on all the succession plan, all the things you need to put in place to make sure that your company will still be relevant for those future generations. And also for you, from a career perspective, I would be reflecting like if you were looking to your career from a long-term perspective or a long-term view, what you already know how to do and you are great at, that can be connected to where your company, the business where you're working at, is going. Because if you are considering, for example, leadership positions for your for the future of your career, maybe it's interesting to reflect also how you are preparing everything around what you deliver, what you work on, what you learn to do, that can be connected to prepare you. If your company is not doing that, maybe you can do by yourself, prepare you to in the future take the lead in some important roles. If not in the same company, at least in the same industry or around whatever you want to do for your for the future of your career. But you need to take the ownership of that and not rely only on someone else or in the company. Your career is only yours and you need to take control for that.